Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, what would happen if you saw your life review? What would you see? What would be the important things to be shown in a life review? On both sides of the coin, how would you feel about it? And maybe that's up for all of us at some point after this life is over. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about near-death experiences with a man who's a real expert about this subject matter and has written a wonderful book called The Purpose of Life, as revealed by near-death experiences from around the world. So I'm very happy to have as a guest today, David Sunfellow. David, welcome to Energy Stew.
Glad to be here.
So I was just introducing the show about life reviews. And not most, because you give percentages in your work of how many people who have near-death experiences also will experience a life review. And certainly people who have had hypnosis, regressive hypnosis to go back in between lifetimes will also experience that. And there are some astral travelers that do that. So, but you have a lot of experience with people talking about life reviews, right?
Yeah, and my work is focused primarily on practical application. What to do with this information that these folks are bringing back. When you're talking about statistics in terms of how many people are actually experiencing life reviews or going through a tunnel or meeting deceased loved ones, that's more the domain of researchers like Jeffrey Long, for example. What I've been focusing on the last many years is people that have had these experiences, brought back this information. What can we do with it? What can we learn from it? How can we apply it to our day-to-day lives?
Right, and there's a purpose why we even go out of body to travel to the other side.
Right.
We go through a period where we're clinically dead for a temporary time and come back. And so many people have different kinds of, or different levels of experiences out there. And some are much briefer than others.
Right.
Some are out there for prolonged times.
Right.
And so the life review, this is fascinating to me because the review takes place in like a computer setting. It's actually virtual. In the old days, we heard of the Akashic Records being a big book in the sky, and you get to go out there and open the book and read the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because that was described before people knew computers. But now that we know how computers work, we can get to the other side. And I don't know what's been described to you about how people get to see their life review and actually experience it.
Mm-hmm. They see it in all kinds of different ways, Peter. Sometimes they just pop right into it. Other times they see bubbles that they enter into. Other times it's a movie situation where they're actually watching scenes and then pulled in and experiencing their life from their perspective, from the perspective of the other person, from the perspective of God, all at the same time. So they happen in all kinds of different ways, and the depth, the quality, the depth of the experiences vary from experiencer to experiencer too. There's no one pattern that they all follow. In fact, not everyone has a life review when they cross over, obviously. So it just depends upon the person that actually is having the experience and apparently what they need to experience, how far it goes, how deep it goes. And the life review is only a small portion of what most people experience when they do cross over. They have encounter with the light, with a light, the light, or lights, or spiritual beings of one kind or another. They often meet family and friends, deceased loved ones. Often they'll be taken on tours and various kinds of adventures on the other side. But again, all this seems to be done for specific reasons for that particular person. What they need to learn, what they need to bring back with them to this life to apply and improve their life and the lives of others.
Right. And I had an experience on the other side through a hypnotic regression back in between my last lifetime and this. And I got an audience with my higher self.
Oh, interesting.
And I didn't know it was my higher self at the time. And it was a man who I was very, very impressed with, overwhelmed by, and I didn't know who he was. And our higher selves don't necessarily have to show up as men or women. They can show up in whatever form
That's right. Sure.
we need them to. And in retrospect, from what you're saying, I see that I needed to have that experience with my higher self to show me more about who I am. My higher self revealed my maybe it's called agelessness.
What was that? Was that the primary lesson?
No, it was an old man. No, he was extremely wise and loving, and I was very captivated by his light, his loving light, and a sense of vast wisdom in him. And I didn't know who he was. I just thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is God.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a little later on, the hypnotherapist said, ask your guides if you can meet your higher self. And I said, okay. And I asked them, and they said, oh, that was the man that you met earlier.
Oh, interesting.
So I understand that there's a purpose for everything that goes on in these experiences to teach us about ourselves.
What did you get from your experience? What were the highlights?
I just thought it was very helpful to understand why my life has unfolded the way it has. Because I'm a teacher. I'm I help people. I'm a healer.
Mm-hmm.
I work from my heart. I know things. I love to interview brilliant people, and I'm able to. And to me, that means a lot, because growing up, I was actually conditioned to believe that I wasn't bright enough to go to college, and I shouldn't be in college, and all kinds of negative projections on me in my early life that now I'm, in a sense, proving wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have all my adult life, but it was when I was younger that it was a shame that they had to, it was a shadow that I had to work with. And I guess we all have shadows of one sort or another that when we get to the other side, we're enlightened about, right?
Again, it depends upon the particular person's experience. There are actually people that cross over, that their primary experience is an encounter with the light, and then they come right back. There's no life review. There's no assessing of their current earthly life. There's no indication about they have a particular purpose to fulfill. And so again, it just depends upon the person, how much information they get and what they need.
Right, but even experiencing light itself is miraculous because it has a power to it. It's very
right. Well, what I've learned from near-death experiences is that there's actually two pillars that are massively transformational. The first main pillar is the light, encounters with the light. And of course, the light can appear in many different forms, but some encounter with this being or presence that knows us and loves us unconditionally. That's completely life-changing. The second pillar is the life review, and that's life-changing because we get to see our impact on other beings in this world and how our thoughts and actions affect the world, and not, again, just from our perspective, but from the perspective of the person that we are actually interacting with. We're in their body, in their mind, in their emotions, experiencing us through them. And so that's something else that's really massively transformational when it comes to near-death experiences.
Yeah, and it's the whole life that we have an opportunity to review from. So there are incidences in our lives that we might not have paid enough attention to that really had an impact, not only on ourselves, but on others. And I guess we get to see those.
Well, that's also something about the life review process that I found, excuse me, is amazing, is the emphasis on the little things being the big things. Because a lot of experiencers will come back and they'll have been shown aspects of their life that they completely forgot. That was some small event that took place that ended up cascading across the universe because it was so significant. Little things like in the book, one of the stories in the book is a young woman who in high school worked at a nursing home and would give this elderly woman that she cared for graham crackers and milk. And that turned out to be this huge, epic experience when she had her life review. And one of the reasons it was is because a lot of the other workers would not want to take care of that particular woman because she was very over the top in terms of how she ate the graham cracker and enjoyed the milk. And this woman had enough love in her heart to step into it and deal with that circumstance. And so when she had a life review, it was amazing. So that's something that's surprised me, that it shows up so consistently. I think it's one of the main insights we learn from near-death experiences is that the little things in our life are really important. We often have this idea, well, I'll live my life and the big things I do in my life, the awards I win, the special thing, the big special things I do for people are the big things. But again, life reviews emphasize, no, it's actually the day-to-day little things, the words we speak to one another, the kind little gestures we do, with an emphasis on those that are most filled with love and selflessness being the most impactful. Right. So I think that's really, that's a extremely practical insight into terms of how to live our lives. And we begin our day in the morning and move throughout our day, if we're holding that on our mind, that all the little things we do throughout the day, all the people we encounter along the way, the dogs on the streets, the cats on the streets, the plants we encounter, that all these beings we are interacting with, our small ways of interacting with them can have really big impacts.
A story in your book is about a man who watered a tree.
One of the stories, yeah, right.
And that was a big deal because he actually went out of his way. So this poor dry tree
That's right. And who would have thought that there'd be such a uproar on the other side about what a great act of kindness and love that was, and how much appreciation there was throughout the universe for that gesture.
I think that's an important story, just to let us know that just being out in life, every moment we can have an impact. It doesn't have to be, pulling someone up from the gutter. There are many, many things that make a difference.
Well, I think so too. The book, this particular version of the book was actually published under another title called Love the Person You're With. And that's the first story in the book. And basically it's Howard Storm, near-death experiencer Howard Storm. He's having an encounter with Jesus, and he's finding out from Jesus, according to Jesus, what the purpose of life is. And the purpose of life can unfold by loving the person you're with. That's how the whole thing, that's the magic of the whole thing, how it works. And when you think again in terms of practical application in life, we're beset every day with all these problems all over the world that seem intractable. How are we going to solve climate change, nuclear proliferation, human sex trafficking, whatever the issue, environmental destruction, whatever the issues are we can think of, how are we possibly going to solve all these problems? They're so far beyond the means of most of us to make an impact. And the answer was, well, love the person you're with. Whoever crosses your path in whatever form they come into your life, including online, through email, on the web, wherever they might be, love the person you're with. That's how we can all make a practical, concrete difference in the world. And that might end up meaning that the way we can execute that in our life is by actually getting involved in various causes of one kind or another. But at the end of the day, it still boils down to love the person or the beings that we're with. And to me, that's really, really helpful advice.
Right. It doesn't mean in a personal, intimate relationship with. It means everybody you come across in your life, you're with them.
Well, another way to say it is one near-death experiencer said, kindness is God's love in action. And kindness shows up a lot. In fact, it shows up in some of the hellish experiences. There's a really fantastic, in-depth hellish experience that a Buddhist practitioner had. He was taken on a tour of the hellish realms by the Buddha of hell. And one of the jewels of insight that he got from these experiences in terms of how to inoculate ourselves from having these, really brutal hellish types of experiences is kindness. Be kind. And again, if you apply that to the idea of love the person you're with, be kind to the person you're with. Be kind to the plants and animals that you encounter. That's, again, something that has so much practical firepower that all of us can relate to. All of us can attempt to be kind throughout our day.
Well, I want to come back to this idea of hellish experience. And I think of it as for people who are dysfunctional in the world related to others, they disregard the well-being of others. And I know people like that, and we know that in government and all that there are people that don't mind that other people are harmed. And I can imagine when people like that get to the other side, they have to understand that, and I don't know if they're that far off, if they get to the other side and they actually have no consciousness of empathy and caring about others, who are they on the other side when they get there? And are they automatically brought to a hellish environment? And I don't know what that means, but it's certainly not fire and brimstone forever. I think of the other side as being supportive in every case and wanting to heal and correct. And so if people need that, they'll have that on the other side. And maybe there are some souls that just can't be helped. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, of course, this is a really deep topic. First of all, I think it's almost impossible for us to judge one another and determine what kind of condition our soul's in, because a lot of us have the idea that the waking personality we're interacting with, that's actually going to determine what the person experiences on the other side. But there's a lot more going on than just the waking conscious personality like you and I are talking to right now. And I can give you one, concrete example. There are some near-death experiences that talk about people that outwardly, I'll use a Christian as an example, look like a good Christian. They have all the mannerisms nailed down. They have the proper way of saying things and doing things that look like they're a good person. They think they're a good person. They're engaging in activities that look good to others. And then they cross over to the other side and find out they weren't aware at all of how selfish their whole motivations were, that the actions that they were engaging in were mostly for show and mostly to round up money or followers or build up their egos in some ways. And so when they encounter that on the other side, they're like profoundly surprised to realize that not only have they been deceiving others all their lives, but they've been in massive self-deception themselves. So it's really hard for us to determine for ourselves or for another our actual condition. What near-death experiences tell us very clearly is that we all will be held and are held accountable for our actions. And whatever activities, thoughts we're engaging in this world are reflected back to us on the other side 1,000-fold.
Well, let's just say also that this religious idea and the dogma of religion can have people very caught up in being the ideal religious dogmatic person that's very tribal. And tribal is always win-lose. We're going to win if we kill off the other side.
Yeah.
Kill off the other tribe. So people who are religious, depends on whether it's a universal collective feeling of love or if it's a tribal feeling where they only love those that agree with them, and everyone else can die.
Right. Well, even that, there's so many nuances attached to these issues. Like, for example, in that case, what near-death experiences tend to emphasize is it's more your intention than the actual act you engage in. It's
Right.
what your intention is behind.
Yeah.
Now, and that is married with what our level of development. So, I mean, the most obvious level of development that's coming to my mind right now is the Old Testament versus the New Testament. In the Old Testament, you have a wrathful God, and you've got people out very tribal going out and killing everybody, right? Except for the chosen tribe. Whereas the New Testament moves more towards a loving God, where Jesus is talking about God being Abba, Papa, is his father. It's a personal God. It's a loving God. It's a God that loves everyone unconditionally. Two very distinct feelings about the Old Testament and New Testament. The point being that we're all on a path of growing and evolving. And so my understanding is we're judged more according to our understanding and level of development at the time and our intentions with whatever level of development we're at. And then as we grow and develop, the bar is lifted and we become less tribal, more universal. We understand love more deeply. It's not just about loving our own particular tribe, but it spreads out, becomes more godlike. But we start at more primitive places where a loving act is to be committed to your particular tribe. That's acceptable at that level.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a starting point.
Yeah,
And then the more it spreads out, the higher our vibes get.
exactly.
And I have people a lot asking me if they'll be forgiven for this or that or whatever. And my response always is, well, what was in your heart? You might have made a mistake, but did you mean to?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
my son is a prosecutor in Manhattan, and he has to talk to these criminals all the time. And he's always trying to discern what is in their heart. Are they truly criminals who, don't care about others and will do bad things? Or are these people who just made a mistake and they mean well?
Right.
And that's more easily forgiven. So he has them do a plea deal or whatever related to how he feels, or not even press charges, depending on whether he feels that they were really true perpetrators who had low vibes. So the other side is like that too. And then this hellish realm, a lot of people, we're going to have to do another show about these things because there's so much to talk about. Because I hope that's fine with you. Because what does a hellish realm mean, and how consuming is it, and what do we learn from it, and also on the other side, there are people who report having met with God. I have no idea what that means. It's not like I'm not godly interested. I just don't know how God presents him or herself at any one time to any one person. And with Jesus, it's a different story. There are images, and maybe with other archangels, etc., that we're familiar with. They might look angelic. And then again, on the other side, people can show up any way that they feel is important for us to see how to be able to relate to them. They know how to reveal themselves to us. Because they could be, on the other side, we can be anything. We can, because after our life is over, if we're quite old, we don't have to be that old anymore.
Yeah.
We can make ourselves look real young.
Right.
And perfect. So, but I don't know if that's true for near-death experiences so much as for actual being on the other side for good, at least for good for this personality that died. That's another story, is who are we after this one personality is done back in other lifetimes? who is it who comes back?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's so much. It's fascinating. We're getting near the end of the show, and it goes so fast. And I want to reemphasize that you have a great book called The Purpose of Life, but you have a lot of stuff on your website and all kinds of videos and other books. So how can people find their way?
Well, here's what the book looks like.
Well, a lot of people are on radio, so they can't.
Oh, that's right. Okay, well, in the video also, right?
It's called The Purpose of Life.
The purpose of life is revealed by near-death experiences from around the world. So they can do a search on that. The main website we have is the-formula.org. If you go there, it'll take you to all the other websites. The book also has a website that has tons of content on it. And there's just gobs and gobs and gobs of fantastic information on these websites.
Right. And to remind the
about
audience.
all different aspects.
To remind the audience, your name is David Sunfellow, so they can find you that way too. And this has been great talking with you because I have a huge amount of questions, and I'm looking forward to talking with you some more.
Okay, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.fm. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening.